And we couldn't travel this week. We had some feverish babies. So
Aww.
we are mama and daddy right now. But we wanted to be a part of HGTV week, even if we couldn't come there.
4 years, watching Hometown meant watching Ben Napier in motion. He was the one holding the crowbar, the one pulling nails out of century-old floorboards, the one explaining why a wall could come down and why another one absolutely could not. So when Season 7 rolled around and longtime viewers noticed something different, something quieter about his presence, the internet did what the internet always does. It started guessing. Some assumed he was stepping back from the show for good. Others wondered if there had been a falling out behind the scenes. A few worried it was something more serious. None of it was wild speculation pulled from nowhere, either, because the show itself had visibly changed. Renovation sequences that once lingered on Ben hauling lumber or framing a doorway were shorter. Aaron Napier's presence on site felt heavier, more central. The pacing that had defined 8 years of the series had shifted just enough for longtime fans to notice, even if they couldn't quite name why. The answer, once it came out, turned out to be less dramatic than the rumors and more relatable than anyone expected. Ben Napier had torn his rotator cuff, and by early 2023 the damage had progressed to the point where surgery wasn't optional anymore. It wasn't a mystery injury either. Ben has talked about it as something that crept up on him gradually, aggravated over years of exactly the kind of physical work Hometown made famous, lifting salvage beams, prying up old flooring, hoisting cabinetry into place, again and again, season after season. A bone spur had been rubbing against the tendon, and what started as a nagging ache eventually turned into pain sharp enough that it was interfering with sleep and with basic tasks around the house. In his own words, later, he described reaching a point where he wasn't carrying his weight the way he wanted to, not just on set but as a father trying to keep up with 2 young daughters. The surgery happened in March 2023, midway through filming what would become Season 7. Doctors repaired the torn rotator cuff, shaved down the bone spur that had been causing the irritation, and trimmed damaged cartilage while they were in there. It's a common enough procedure for anyone who spends years doing repetitive, forceful overhead work, but it comes with a recovery timeline that doesn't care how busy your production schedule is. Immobilization, restricted movement, months of physical therapy before anything resembling normal lifting is allowed again. For a man whose entire professional identity was built around using his hands and his back, that kind of forced stillness wasn't just physically uncomfortable. It disrupted the rhythm of how he worked, and by extension, how the show worked. Aaron Napier ended up documenting a lot of this in real time on social media, which is actually how a lot of fans first pieced together what was going on before HGTV addressed it directly. She posted a photo of Ben recovering on the couch, arm in a sling, surrounded by stuffed animals that daughters had piled on him, with a caption checking off the procedure like a to-do list, the rotator cuff repaired, the bone spur handled, the cartilage cleaned up, and Erin, only half joking, naming herself the best nurse in the business. It was a small, human glimpse into a side of their lives that the show rarely shows outright, the unglamorous stretch after the cameras usually cut away, when the person known for building things has to sit and let other people carry the weight instead. That period produced one of the stranger, more talked about moments to come out of the recovery. Just days after surgery, while still on pain medication, Ben had a long-standing commitment to speak at a scholarship event at a Southern Baptist college in Mississippi. He went ahead with it, medicated and, by his own admission afterward, not entirely tracking his own train of thought while on stage. He later joked about the experience, saying he couldn't quite follow what he was saying in the moment, even though he apparently didn't lack for confidence delivering it. Aaron was there with him, keeping an eye on things, and whatever happened on that stage never became a public incident, just a strange, slightly funny footnote that Ben was comfortable enough to bring up himself once he'd healed. Because Ben couldn't physically be present for all of the remaining Season 7 shoots, production had to adapt around him. One episode became something of a running joke among fans once it aired. Rather than being on site, Ben appeared via a FaceTime call with Aaron, checking in from home while recovering. When the footage aired later and he watched it back, he admitted he barely remembered the call at all, chalking it up to the medication he'd been on immediately after the operation. It's a small moment, but it says something about how directly the show chose to fold his recovery into the storyline instead of quietly editing around it. Rather than hiding the gap, Hometown let viewers see exactly why Ben wasn't hammering nails that week. During the months that followed, the balance on screen did shift, And that shift was real, not imagined by fans piecing together clues. Erin took on more of the hands-on coordination, working with contractors, managing timelines, and handling parts of the process that had traditionally fallen to Ben. He didn't disappear from the show. He kept contributing wherever his recovery allowed, offering direction, reviewing plans, stepping into specialty carpentry once his range of motion improved enough to make that safe. But for a stretch of time, the physical labor that had always been his signature had to be delegated, first to the crew, and gradually back to him as his shoulder healed enough to trust again. The shoulder wasn't an isolated health story either, and Ben has been fairly open about that too. Around the same period, he was dealing with high blood pressure connected to his weight, enough that doctors flagged it as a genuine concern rather than a routine note at a checkup. That, combined with the recovery from surgery, seems to have pushed him toward a broader lifestyle overhaul. He spent much of the months leading up to the operation working out with real intention, in part so he'd be in better shape heading into surgery and better able to sleep comfortably afterward. Over the following year or so, he lost close to 100 pounds, changed how he and Erin ate as a family, and leaned into the kind of sustainable, whole food approach that's built to last rather than a short-time fix. He's talked about the motivation behind it in fairly plain terms, wanting to be around for his daughters, Helen and May, and wanting to be physically capable of keeping up with them rather than watching from the sidelines. None of this ended with the shoulder, either. Ben has also dealt with a long-running ankle injury from years of playing basketball, and more recently doctors have pointed to arthritis serious enough that they've discussed the possibility of an ankle replacement down the road. Put together, it paints a picture of someone whose body has genuinely absorbed the cost of a decade spent doing physically demanding work on camera, week after week, season after season, even as the finished renovations made it all look effortless. The polished reveal at the end of each episode never showed the toll it took to get there. What's notable, looking back at how all of this played out, is how much of it the Napiers chose to bring into the show itself rather than keep entirely off-screen. They didn't have to explain any of it. Plenty of television personalities handle health issues privately and let a season simply look a little different without ever addressing why. Ben and Erin went the other way, letting cameras capture some of the more awkward, unfiltered moments, like a groggy FaceTime call or Erin only half-jokingly worrying aloud about her husband overdoing it with his left arm. That decision fits with how they've generally operated since Hometown first premiered back in 2016, sharing enough to feel genuine without turning every private struggle into a spectacle. It also explains why the online theories from that period, the ones guessing at secret exits or hidden conflicts, never really matched what was actually happening. The truth was more ordinary than any of that. A physically demanding job had finally caught up with a person's body. He had it repaired, and then he spent a long, unglamorous stretch of months getting back to where he'd been before, all while a production crew and a spouse quietly rearranged themselves around him. There's no scandal buried in it, no falling out, no abrupt departure. Just an injury common enough that plenty of tradespeople who never appear on television deal with the exact same thing, treated with more openness than most celebrities bother to offer. By the time Season 7's back half aired in January 2024 and Season 8 followed, Ben was back to doing the specialty carpentry the show is built around, even if some of his approach had changed along the way. He's talked about leaning on more ergonomic tools and adjusting certain techniques to avoid putting the same repetitive strain on his shoulder that caused the problem in the first place. It's less about proving he's fully back to where he was, and more about building habits that might let him keep doing this work for years without ending up back in an operating room. Erin, for her part, has stayed candid about still worrying when he insists on lifting something he probably shouldn't, which suggests the caution hasn't entirely gone away even now that the recovery is well behind them. So the honest answer to what happened to Ben Napier is a lot less mysterious than the theories that circulated while fans were left guessing. He got hurt doing the same kind of work that built the show's reputation in the first place. He had it fixed, and he spent a long stretch of time doing the unglamorous, unphotogenic work of healing before easing back into the role viewers were used to seeing him in. Along the way, he and his family chose to be fairly open about all of it, from the surgery itself to the blood pressure numbers, to the weight loss, to the lingering ankle issue that's still part of the conversation now. If anything, that openness is probably why so many people stayed invested in the Napiers through a season that looked noticeably different from the ones before it. Viewers weren't just watching another home get restored. They were watching two people work through a genuinely difficult stretch and choosing to let cameras stay rolling through most of it. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.